Deliverusmars is, by its own admission, an atmospheric and narrative-driven sci-fi adventure. Sadly though, what the developers fail to deliver is a stable video game, which in turn ruins one of its key selling points, which is the immersion. It is well written and has a genuinely intriguing story that just may keep people around through the technical issues. By having characters that look like paper mache balloons you used to make as a kid with eyebrows that have been drawn on by a 3-year-old with a box of new crayons, it's not good for the atmosphere.
To be honest, she's written quite well. She's actually quite witty, quite funny. It's sometimes a bit hard to look back past these PlayStation 3 models, though.
And it's a shame that a game that was already delayed once for further polishing still came out so rough around the edges, the middle, and the front.
Take a look at this view. Wow.
It's pretty.
Never ceases to amaze.
Oh, apart from that popping. What the?
It's a shame we couldn't build her properly.
What is this?
What? All these shortages of materials.
Just for context on this game though, this isn't some massive AAA title with a huge budget. The game is about 5 to 7 hours long and cost £25. Saying that though, overall I'm feeling an okay rating on this. If you are all in on Deliver Us the Moon, which this is the sequel to, then I'd give it a shot at the budget price of £25. Otherwise, honestly, if you're even slightly intrigued, I'd just watch the YouTube story overview. Alright, let's dive a little bit deeper into the issues I have by getting lost in the world of Mars.
Am I interrupting something?
No? Thanks to an entire backlog of precedents, I know not to be surprised to see you here.
If I made it this far, you might as well just let me.
No.
Maria's gonna be on video.
No.
Okay, but you guys rehearse that.
Okay, I'm going to delve into the bad first, because really whether or not you get this game is going to completely depend on how much you're willing to forgive the technical issues the game has, and whether or not those issues are going to affect your personal immersion in the game world. Because if it does, there is no point playing this game. If you can forgive it and just focus on the writing, which is very good, and the story, which is intriguing, then you might be okay. If you can also forgive it for its kind of boring gameplay and average puzzles. So look, shocking animations, poor lighting, terrible or a complete lack of facial expressions.
She looks dead to the world. Look at her. Absolutely zero emotion on these people's faces. She's got a little bit of emotion on her face. Look at these two.
All of these things further pull you out of the game. Though Kathy and her father have fantastically performed, brilliantly voice acted, and you know what, they're so good that they actually do pull you back into the narrative, which says a lot considering a lot of the issues you're going to be seeing. Character models are stiff and lifeless, looking like mannequins, and a lot of the models just look like they're kind of staring into the abyss.
Hello? What the hell's going on, man? What's she staring at? What's she staring? What?
Now they did say there was going to be a day 1 patch. Now I've been playing this game on day 3 and all the bugs and frame rate issues and graphical glitches, they're all still there, so I'm not gonna let them off with this stuff. But put it quite simply, I struggle to be immersed in the atmosphere of a game when the game pops between 10 FPS, 25 FPS, doors and lights pop into vision and pop out of vision. Lighting just doesn't load on somebody's face, eyebrows glitch through somebody's forehead. All of that stuff ruins that aspect of the game, and you can have a strong narrative, but if you're not delivering it on a visual front, it's going to be very difficult to get into that narrative.
What the fuck? Okay, I've glitched out. Oh, great. It's going to be one of them, innit?
Just a quick list of the type of issues you're going to be seeing. You're going to kind of slide off pieces of the environment and fall to your death. Textures aren't going to load on large parts of the map. Constant stuttering, frame rate loss, to the point that it's borderline unplayable. I mean, do you think you can play a game at 15 FPS? If that's playable to you, then fine. But I think for most people, you just turn it off at that point. Moving on to the gameplay, and honestly, it doesn't get much better. The gameplay is either puzzle solving or climbing. The climbing controls are okay. It's not the most engaging gameplay, boring in large parts, and then you've got the kind of interactive gameplay, which is even more boring. It's just pressing buttons in a cockpit.
What? Yeah, is this Microsoft Flight Simulator? Shit, have I got the wrong game? What's going on?
When they do inject some urgency via the storytelling, which I don't want to spoil for you, but there is some scenes where the kind of just looking around your cockpit and pressing buttons thing is actually quite good because the story is driving the intensity of it. When it's just you setting off and you can't fail this supposed puzzle, I use the term puzzle loosely, and you're just pressing buttons to set off in a plane and it goes on forever, it's boring. Maybe you find that stuff interesting. I just sat there pressing buttons, pulling levers, and that was it, and you set off and it's like, oh really, you made me do that for 10 minutes? So sadly the core gameplay loop is average, I'd say. It's not vaguely exciting, and sometimes it was a struggle to come back to Deliverusmars because it's empty. There's no threats. You're always alone. It's just you and the environment. And due to the aforementioned technical issues, it's hard to get engaged with the environment. It's hard to be sold on the world you're in, and that's a shame because moving on to the good, the writing here is very good, the voice acting is excellent, and the story is genuinely intriguing. And you know what? They touch on some heady themes. The story here is generally one of relocation, the trials and tribulations we can face if we don't look after the planet we're currently on. It wears its message very clearly on its sleeve, and that includes other key topics such as climate change, planetary care, colonization, the human condition, mental health, what it means to even be a citizen of a planet, fatherhood, and honestly, it does a pretty good job of it all. The overall story is wrapped in a much more personal story compared to the previous game, and it's all the better for it in my opinion. But with the fantastic voice acting as I mentioned previously, it's easy to get invested in these characters. Sadly though, with the terrible cutscenes where you can clearly see the graphical issues up close and personal, it doesn't take long for you to be pulled straight back out.
Make the right decisions.
Claire? Kathy? Come meet us in the cockpit.
Kat, I said I'd do what's best for the mission. So far I'm doing just that. Right?
Just briefly then, I mean, those who played Deliver Us the Moon will probably find a lot more to love here than those who didn't. I had a hard time coming back to Mars between sessions, knowing that most of my time in this game would be spent on a bland planet with characters who are terribly animated, with no emotion in their kind of physical features, but admittedly they did have a lot of emotion in their voice. If that's enough for you, then pick up the game at 25 quid. You could argue you can't really go wrong, but I think it's more about the 6 to 7 hours it takes to play the game and some of the very slow, almost glacial sections that you will sit through is probably the bigger hurdle than the money here. Time is money, as they say. Anyway, that's that. Deliverusmars. If you thought differently, let me know. Take care. Peace.